screen. Good morning, folks. And welcome to Chart Chat Live, either Season 1, Episode 8 or Round 8. I am Steve Wexler, and joining me is Jeffrey Shaffer. And let's get the all-important reminder slide.
It is recording. Thank you, Steve.
You're welcome, Jeffrey. So, Jeff, take it
Hello,
away.
everybody. Jeff Shaffer here, Chief Operating Officer and Vice President of Information Technology and Analytics at Unifun in Cincinnati, Ohio. I'm also adjunct professor at the University of Cincinnati, where I teach data visualization and 4-time Tableau Zen Master and co-author of the Big Book of Dashboards with my partner here, Steve Wexler.
Thank you, Jeff. I am Steve Wexler. I'm the founder, principal, and sole employee of Data Revelations. I was Tableau's inaugural Iron Viz champion a long time ago. It was in 2011, and boy, has it changed. I'm newly elected to the Tableau Zen Master Hall of Fame, and along with Jeff and Andy, I'm one of the 3 authors of the Big Book of Dashboards. And the whole reason for Chart Chat, well, it's not to see 2 people fighting so much. The 3 of us, Andy Cockreeve not being with us at the moment, had wonderful discussions about everything that went into the book. I mean, everything. Should this be here? Is this the clearest way? And we're trying to recapture that because we're hoping people who listen to this or watch it or are here live now will find it useful. How we parse things, how we argue our point. Jeff and I hardly see eye to eye on everything. We see eye to eye on most things, but it's fascinating when he tries to convince me that there's a better way of looking at something, and hopefully he feels the same way. So it isn't so much 2 people duking it out. It's more like a couple of friends fighting over a donut chart. So here is our agenda for today. We want to discuss animation and transitions in Tableau, discussion of Iron Viz 2019. We do have a chat capability with this, so if you click chat and have some questions you'd like us to entertain, I think we'd like nothing more. And with Jeff, I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to hand things over to you, and we can discuss what I have predicted 6 months ago when we first saw the alpha for this, that animation and transitions in Tableau are going to be huge. Like Bruno Mars doing Uptown Funk with Mark Ronson, huge. And the item is still in alpha, but Jeff, I'm going to ask you to start.
Great. Let me share my screen here. So animations, Tableau has called this Viz animation. I think that potentially has some confusion. People have actually been tweeting about that as well, that they're not really animations. Tim says these are transitions. Kimberly from the Tableau team, the Viz animation team, the product manager, said there was a lot of internal debate about what to call it, and she'd love to hear more about how we consider animations different than transitions. And I'll talk about that in a second here, but just specifically, the new Viz animations are mark transitions. When a mark shifts, it animates in space, and so we'll take a look at that and what that means. It's interesting that PowerPoint considers animation, that's an object. So you animate an object in PowerPoint. A transition moves from one slide to another slide, a fade in or a fade out. Adobe has that concept as well. Adobe has CSS animations and transitions, and the difference for them is that an animation does not require a triggering event, a trigger of some sort, and a transition does require a trigger. So that's another interesting thing. I also did a little bit of research on this, looking at what others, if there were any guidance out there, and this was really interesting to me. Microsoft has a whole web page on user experience and how it designs its user interface, specifically when it talks about animations and transitions. And Microsoft really categorizes transitions as an animation, but an animation gives an appearance of motion or change over time to give feedback, preview an effect of an action, show a relationship between objects, to draw attention. Where a transition is an animation used to keep the users orientated during a state change or an object manipulation. And so to me, that really kind of sums up what Tableau is doing. We're going to talk about what our brain is, how powerful it is when we see things like animation. So there's going to be a lot of caution in this area. Microsoft, it actually says just that. Best animations and transitions are used to communicate users non-verbally and to make state changes more natural and less noticeable. By contrast, the least effective are gratuitous. They don't communicate anything, or they draw unnecessary attention to the animation. They're best used in a secondary form. They should communicate information that is useful but not critical, and be accessible to users through other means. So thought that was interesting. So with that, I guess they gave some, questions to ask. Do the following conditions apply? And I thought this was interesting. I don't know that all of these would necessarily apply to visualization, but I look at them and I think, wow, a lot of this does apply. And so some questions to ask about the speed and users. And so we'll post this. We'll make sure that you have this list and the link to this Microsoft website. Just a couple of them hit home. Does it become tiresome? That grabbed my attention. Does it interfere with the visualization? And then over here with transitions, the state change is conceptually disorientating or confusing or otherwise hard to understand. Is it visually jarring? So those jumped out at me. So anyway, we'll post the link to that. So let me start with the whole.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Jeff, well, you kind of anticipated, which is, we're saying, oh, animations are new. Tableau page animation, or what they call the pages shelf, that goes back at least to Tableau 2.0. That was in the product when I started using Tableau in 2006. And people have been using it. The problem with it, it's not web enabled. You can't use it in Tableau Online, Tableau Public. The other thing is as this discussion of, no, that's not an animation, that's a transition. And I think of, do we have to clearly define this and have what the semantics is? And there's like confused voices in the back of my head someplace with the discussion of these things. So, and I'll save my last point until the end. But do we need to have a clear definition of what these things are? And it looks like you're hitting the thing that I was hoping that you would hit, which is the page animations.
Yeah, so you're right on. Page animations have been there for a long time. You could take a date or a categorical pill or a time dimension of some sort, put it on your page animation, and you can animate it over time or animate it across a state or across countries or anything like that. And so I think page animations have been there for a very long time. They've been very useful. As you pointed out, one of the biggest problems, at least in the Tableau world with this, is that you couldn't use it on Tableau Public. You can't use it on Tableau Server. That's going to change. That's coming. So that's nice. But let's look at that. Let's talk about them. This is using the page animations, and I'm animating time of badge swipes in my building. Employees badge swiping in the back of the building. Very, very simple as they come in till the cleaning crew comes in at night. A bunch of other ones is animating things on a map movements. And so I have a lot of examples from this presentation that I've done on location data. And on the left half of the screen, I'm animating the ships coming into the East Coast. Somebody else had created this, and I was emulating it in Tableau, recreating it. And this is hour by hour, going through the days, January 1st of 2017, animating that over time. On the right side of the screen, animating minute by minute on a single day, New Year's Day on 2017, as the ships are moving in. Along those same lines, I animated the trash trucks in Cincinnati. This is, again, minute by minute, going through the day, showing the trash routes. And this does work in a static form when you want to show the whole route, the complete route, or you want to filter and look at day by day. But when you're looking at an animated fashion, it's interesting to see the trucks filling in the patterns throughout the day, and seeing the patterns fill in of the streets as they move throughout the day. Chris DiMartini created with extensions in Tableau a Kepler extension, and this is that same data using a Kepler extension. And Kepler has some great animations that we can now bring to Tableau. So this is another form of animation that we'll see, at least in the mapping world, because we can use extensions to animate things, and it creates another view of the data. This is snow plows. We had a major snowstorm earlier this week, and animating hour by hour how the plows are clearing the streets, starting with downtown and moving outward into the suburbs, hour by hour through a major snowstorm. This is movement of people in Cincinnati, again, minute by minute, device data. And what struck me on this one is the area downtown throughout the day. By 4:00 p.m., there was a lot of people downtown. Noticed, oh, that's the ballpark. And sure enough, there was a ball game. And so I focused the map down toward the ball game. And you can see interesting things in this data. Before the game starts, they're hitting the bars and restaurants down there. By 4:00, the game starts, and the stadium starts to fill up with a lot of people coming into the stadium.
Hey Jeff, can I just note the motion and movement and change is actually quite smooth. Part of the choppiness that some people may be seeing, it's just an issue pertaining to the webinar platform.
The webinar, yeah, sure.
This stuff is actually very smooth.
Did the same thing. This is using Kepler again. This could be done in Tableau with the extension now, with a Tableau extension to Kepler, but this is the same exact data, just showing it with Mapbox and Kepler in sort of a 3D form, and you could see the stadium. At the end I lit it all up to kind of show where they were all coming from through the different patterns. And then this example, I really love this. Again, this works in a static form to show the age of the buildings in Cincinnati, where you can kind of see downtown area. The downtown is, specifically, whoops, sorry about that. The downtown area, right here is really the oldest buildings, and then it kind of moves out and kind of expands out. And in an interactive form, we could see a neighborhood or we could see dots on a map, but really, to me, the animation is what brings this to life. Cincinnati was really founded in the 1800s. You can see the area downtown on the river, a lot of German immigrants, and they call it over the Rhine, as the Ohio River was the Rhine River, so they call it over the Rhine. And you can see it expand out into the 1900s. We start tearing out past the downtown area. And after the war, we see a development of some of the suburbs. After World War II, suburbia really blows out right here into the 1950s. We really burn out all the outside areas, start to burn in there with the suburban areas. And then that continues into the 80s and the 90s, and even to where we are today. And animation, in my opinion, in this particular visualization, brings the data to life. You can see it in a static form, but watching it over the years as it goes from 1 year to the next. So let me contrast that to what the Tableau is calling the Viz animations. I'll specifically say it's related to the marks, and what Tim and others have maybe termed transitions of marks. But I'll just call them mark animations, moving things from spot to spot. Things that do not animate in this are the axis or the annotation layer, pie charts specifically, text charts. Labels do animate, but text tables, polygons, things like that, and trend lines. So we'll give you this comes from a Tableau talk, which I'll show you. There's some great resources here, but this particular resource comes from Tableau in Motion. So what are these mark animations? This viz here is probably the one that caught a lot of social media attention, was bar chart races. And so I've just recreated a bar chart race here in Tableau with Superstore data. It uses the page animations over in the top right-hand corner going month and year, but the mark animations are the bars, moving up from one to the other. So
Jeff, I'm just going to reiterate that this looks really cool when we don't have a bulky webinar platform. That's it's kind of
choppy.
It's choppy at the moment. That said, as cool as this is, there's a question as to are people just going to get tired of this type of stuff in a short amount of time? People will see, wow, look, I can do this thing and show how they're changing order, and this is jumping up from here. And does it eventually lose its allure? So definitely worth seeing it perform a little better than what we're getting on the webinar right now.
Yeah, so I think this is a good spot to have some dialogue. I think
Jeff,
the usefulness.
I gotta stop. People are saying my audio is not working.
Oh, go ahead.
Hello, hello, hello. Can people hear me?
I can hear you.
Oh, it's working. Yep. Okay, we're good. Thank you. Hey, okay. Hey, there's Hesham, Iron Viz winner, joining us.
So this, I'm glad your audio is working. This is a good place to have a little dialogue. Is the usefulness of this, right? I can imagine that people are going to create all kinds of things. In fact, somebody I created a little heart, that kind of thumps in Ohio, right?
And where come on, think of all those animated bullet charts, where the first bullet comes out and it's kind of dancing along, and then there's a totally different effect for the second bullet, and the third bullet has a third way of doing type of stuff, etc. So yep, Jeff created something unnecessary first, folks.
Well, there was a lot of people creating lots of fun stuff, right? So yeah, I mean, it's certainly, Tableau, if we're just talking about Tableau and not other tools, Tableau is really kind of moving into a user experience where we have collapsible containers and navigation and menu options and other things that this might be an extension of that, where you could start doing things that are not Viz related in your visualization. A bat signal, I think it was, a few people on Twitter were asking about that. There's this one, somebody created a flying bird, I guess, already with the Viz animations. Somebody else said, I guess I'm getting old, so they decided to animate the points of them as a younger self going to an older self, and so that was interesting. And that same person created an animation of a soccer game. Now this one seems useful to me. You're using the page animations along with the Viz mark animations, and you'll see that, again, we're on a webinar, but hopefully you'll see the smooth, somewhat smooth transitions of the players as they're moving. So that's interesting, right? So two sources as we start talking about this. One, I highly recommend these two videos. Jock Mackinlay at Tableau did a session at the Data 19, the recent Tableau conference, and it's posted on YouTube. He really talks about this, especially the caution around using this, just being careful. And I think I'll open it up to Steve. I think we should probably have a little dialogue about this, but the pre-attentive attribute motion is probably the most dominant of anything. It's something that we're just wired to do. If you're sitting there and there's a bug moving across your desk, you would jump, right? You would see it. If I threw something at your head, and a ball, and I kind of tossed a ball at your head, you would move out of the way very, very quickly because you would see that motion coming at you. So,
and the example that Jock shows is in saying a lot of these pre-attentive attributes are things that we developed over time to survive in the jungle, on the savannah, wherever. And he shows what looks like a lion in the grass, and very well camouflaged, and it is the perception of motion that allowed us to survive and see, oh, there is a nasty predator there, and I can see it moving even slightly. So it's very, very powerful stuff. I think you and I have the fear of, well, I'm delighted they're making this available. I think it's extremely well rendered, even in the alpha, and people will abuse the crap out of it. But when they use it well, it's small, subtle things that I'm absolutely convinced will both facilitate and enhance understanding. So I'm excited about it. I know you've got some stuff to show. I've got a couple of quick things to show as well.
Yeah, so I would just encourage everybody. This is a fantastic presentation. If you've not watched it or you weren't able to see it live at the conference, Steve and I had a preview of it before conference, and I've watched it again since. So I've now seen it twice, and it's just a really, really good presentation. So I would encourage everybody to check that out. It talks about not only the good that comes from these marks, but how to be cautious about it. The second one I'll point you to as a resource is another talk done by two of the Tableau product managers and engineer, and they have a fantastic talk also on this topic, Tableau in Motion, talking about the new Viz animation. So check both of those out. Somebody's posting those links already in the chat window. We can do that for you as well, and we'll make these slide decks available. So one of the fun things, this is really one of the fun things from this particular talk, was a little video that they shared about why Viz animations is useful. And if anybody has played the game where you put an object in a cup and you move the cup around and you try to find the object in a cup, you've done this. So they showed this video with a dog and a treat following this cup. And so you can kind of follow the cup around. And this is really kind of describes Viz animation, right? If this were chunky and you couldn't follow it, you wouldn't be able to see. If there's a thing called the flicker test, right? If you put a little space of black in between these, you'd never be able to follow those cups moving from place to place. But you can do that. And you can do that just as the dog can do that. What I hope that we don't do with Viz animation is, do so much of it that it becomes, sort of a magic trick where, we think we're following the cup and the dog picks the cup, but unfortunately, we've moved the mark and, we've played games with it. So I think it can be done in a useful manner, but I think we're going to see some crazy uses of it that maybe it'll be fun, but probably not all that useful from a visualization standpoint.
And I'm thinking next workshop, cups and treats for attendees, Jeff.
There you go.
How this works. So
there you go. All right. Well, did you want any other thoughts on the Viz animation? You want to show your
a few things from my that I did, and also a couple from one of my favorite visualization fellows, Ludovic Tavernier, is experimenting with this, and so let me share my screen. So here is something from a recent Makeover Monday data set where we are looking at the percentage of people from 8 to age 18 who own cell phones, own mobile phones. And this is in 2015, and you have roughly 12% of 8-year-olds have a cell phone versus almost 80% of 18-year-olds. And how does this change over time? So here's a snapshot of 2015, and now I'll show you 2017. Hopefully the animation renders smoothly. How did that look on your end, Jeff? Chop?
That looked good.
And using kind of my, I don't know if I'll feel the same way about it a year from now, but I kind of like a comet chart to show the change between two periods or anything having ordinal notion in it. And I can see there are places where these things have been increased quite a bit. Ludovic did something very similar with this. The only fear I had is he turned the thing on its side, and I wonder if people are thinking, this is 2015 and this is more recent time going from left to right. But this is showing 2015 and here's the change over time to 2019. And I just want to show that again, and I want folks to focus over here on where there's the biggest percent change in ownership, and see what's happening with that. All of these things are completing in the same amount of time, but my eye did kind of gravitate towards this, and I think that's one of the more interesting stories. Wow, there's a big jump amongst 12-year-olds, and this helped me see that a little bit more. I wish I could tune the animation. I'm wondering what you think of this, Jeff, so that if it's they all start at the same time, and if it's a very small amount of room, one of them, the places where the change is small finishes sooner. These all finish at the same time. The reason we see that gap of 28% is it's just transversing a much longer space. And I'm wondering if I'd want the 14% to finish sooner than the 28%, and it will augment or amplify the fact that there was a much bigger gap here.
Instead of evenly distributing the number over a period of time, you have a constant rate, and it just takes one longer than the other.
Exactly. So would like to see something like that. Here's again a work in progress from Ludovic, showing has literacy gender inequalities changed for 15 to 24-year-olds. And so this is showing the gender gap. This is one of my favorite, Cleveland dot plot. Way to show the gender gap, and it's really pronounced in Afghanistan, and it's considerably less pronounced in Iraq and in Madagascar, at least. And the number that's here is the last time they did the analysis, and now, they updated the analysis in 2018, and let's see what's going on. And seeing how the dots move, I think enhances things for me. Or makes it a little easier for me to see what should I look at, what should I pay attention to. Jeff, I'm a big fan of the jitter plot, or there's a part of your voice in the back of my head, and it's there with Steve Fuse, by the way, going, no, it's a strip plot with a jitter. But trying to explain what jittering is, and that you're just kind of taking the dots and you're scattering them left and right a little bit, just so that they're not all on top of each other. Because if you show a jitter plot, people think, well, this dot that's over to the left how is that different than the dot that's over to the right? And it isn't. So I could have an option here that just says, show jitter, yes or no, and I'll emulate that now, and then people say, oh, you're just showing how the dots are scattering. I see. You're just making it so that they're not all on top of each other. So I think these things are small, subtle, but they highlight, in the case of the first three examples, they highlight more interesting findings. And in this case, it's going to help me explain how a jitter plot works in a very simple manner. So this excites me.
Yeah, I don't disagree. You could create a little animation on how jitter works and show people how it works, or you could give them an option in the Viz to turn it on or off, or how much, and see the difference. I guess I did one very similar. Let me just show one example here since you showed the jitter example. I did one where the dots were jittered. This is life expectancy of a female, where I jittered on the x-axis just to separate the dots, but then used the animation to organize it. So just using an action to parameter to change it and organize the dots into what I'll call a unit histogram, and being able to do the same thing, on a set action. You could actually click the points and it'll move. So set action or parameter action, you could use, sort of either technique to kind of do that. So I think that's very helpful, and it kind of shows the points as they're moving to where they line up. I think that could be a useful technique as well.
That's a really good case, because you have one chart that's morphing into the other, as opposed to, oh, I'm going to have a bar chart and then a totally unrelated line chart, and there's really no relationship between the two things except the transition looks cool. In this case, you're showing how the dots are assembling into a different pattern. And
yeah, Jock has a great example where he has one line chart, and then he burst the line into all the subcategories, and the lines spread out across all the different categories. I think he does that one in his talk. So that's another one to take a look at.
So, Jeff, shall we pivot and discuss Iron Viz?
I think that's good. We have a quiet crowd here today. Nobody's asked any questions that I can see. So yeah, fire away.
All right. So the premier data visualization competition, live competition in Las Vegas, Iron Viz 2019. So I strongly encourage folks to watch the video of this. From left to right, there is our co-author and the Shrinking Violet Andy Cotgreave. Goodness, is he in his element there. You have Joshua Smith, Lindsay Poulter, Hesham Issa, and co-host, and she did a killer job, Keisha Rose. And I thought Iron Viz was wonderful this year and ridiculously entertaining and some incredible stuff. I've got a couple of thoughts on some big improvements they made, but Jeff, I first want to just hear your take on it.
Very exciting. These three are super talented all the way around. I was super excited to see them compete. We lost Steve there. Steve, hopefully you come back.
I'm still here.
Okay, your video cut out there. I made a prediction going into the Iron Viz that we weren't going to see any crazy unorthodox chart types. You have three people up there that are really, for the most part, create best practice viz day to day, right? In their day, they all work as consultants and vizzes, and they do this right for a living, and so I just looking at the entry that all three of them had, there wasn't any crazy chart types. These three used bar charts and maps and standard visualization types, and it's the way that they craft them into the stories that is fascinating. So I wasn't disappointed. All three of them did exactly that. They created great visualizations.
Hesham you did some curvy stuff, but it wasn't gratuitous.
Yeah, it was curvy to connect a bar to a dot. It was more. It wasn't even encoding data necessarily. It was just to draw your eye to connect one piece of information to the other. But just the simplicity of the vizzes and the care that all three of them took was really impressive. So.
Agreed. If the criteria were different, Hesham and I think Joshua might have done something different. Lindsay made a full-blown app in that Joshua's storytelling and what he found some great insights, and I think you could spend 10-15 minutes exploring it and you'd be done. And same with Hesham's, which was just fantastic, and they found interesting stuff in the data, and they came up with a cool way to present it. Lindsay's stuff you could spend hours on. doing an analysis saying, gee, should we put restaurants here? What would compete? What happens if the population changes, etc. Here are the two things that I think were just great that they improved from the previous year, although one created a bit of a complication. All three of the dashboards are downloadable. And that was not the case. So, previously it was IBM weather data and IBM locked it down. You couldn't download the dashboards. Holy crap, you can download these things and get inside and see what they're doing, how they built it, how it was fashioned, etc. And you're going to be better because of it. So bravo for making all these things downloadable. The other thing is they changed the Twitter, the Twitter rules, the way the audience can participate and contribute to the overall score of the contestant. So the judges account for 90 points, the audience accounts for 10. And in the past, it wasn't quite a winner take all, but I think it was 10 points for first place, 5 points for second, or something like that. Now it's proportioned based on the number of tweets that come in. And there was a tie this year, which has never happened before and will probably never happen again. We're wondering, well, what's going on in a tie? And then Jeff and I hear from I think it was from Ashley, that yes, that Heshem and Joshua were tied to 5 decimal places, and Jeff, you had the best line of the day, which was, doesn't Tableau go to at least 6 decimal places? But that shouldn't have happened. But it does bring up something, which is what audience is voting for this? And is it just the people that are watching, or is it a whole lot of very interested, invested parties outside that are participating as well? Jeff, do you want to mention that and maybe a way to improve that a little bit going?
Well, there was a lot of talk post Iron Viz. I think Tableau will probably make sure that a tying event doesn't happen again. I don't know what they'll put in place to handle that, but certainly Twitter. I think they intend to look at just Twitter votes that are in the Las Vegas area or in the nearby, but that's very hard to do, and especially the way that they're trying to do that in a quick manner. My guess is that judges will either have an opportunity to have another point, or they'll structure the weighting system so that a tying event can't necessarily happen in the future. At the end of the day, I look at all 3 of them. You could have picked any one of them as a winner for different reasons. Like you said, I think it really comes down to the criteria that was picked. Josh, to me, had just a fantastic story, an individual story that he pulled out of the data. As you pointed out, Lindsay had this business dashboard that, any business, would have probably picked over the other 2, just because it was actionable, right? And so from a go away and do something, she had the most probably actionable viz up there. And then Heshem, it was a work of beauty, and it captured a story in a different way rather than a personal story like Josh had. He had these stories of the country, going country by country, and that really captured the crowd. It got your attention, and it was just it was a wonderful story as well in a different way.
Jeff, what you had mentioned to me yesterday, and Kevin has brought it up in chat, is the voting be done in the app. So that you look, it is possible you could have 50,000 people from outside all tweeting with the hashtag that aren't there. If it's part of the app, it's only people that are involved with the conference are.
Yeah, the Women in Analytics, they've done 2 data visualization competitions, and they do it in the app. So you have to be registered at the conference in the app, and then you get 1 vote. And then now they do it a little differently. They have their presentations. They have 5 finalists that present all day, which is a little much, that they have to stand there and present over and over and over and over again to everybody at the conference. But the voting is done really well in that it's app based. So yeah, you could certainly do that. And then with a size of crowd like that, you'd be able to get much more precision on the weighting.
Well, we discussed things that I think they improved quite a bit this year. I've got some ideas for other things they can do to improve this, and part of it comes from an observation of how the Iron Viz has metamorphosed over. So Jeff and I have both participated in Iron Viz. I was in the first Iron Viz, so that was back in 1957. Oops, sorry about that. That was actually in 2011. And the audience, it was a breakout session. It was a breakout session through 2014. And I think we had at most 300 people there. The conference itself had 1,200, 1,300 people in 2011. Now you're looking at 8,000 plus. It took place in the Denny's versus at the Mandalay Bay. All right, it took place at the Encore Las Vegas. First prize was $2,000 plus an iPad. First prize now is just.
You still have it? You still have the iPad?
No, it broke, sadly. Okay. But I do have the replacement one that I got, so I like to think, yes, I still have it. Got one from one. I think it's version 2, not quite the original version of iPads. But Jeff, you said something at Fanalytics, an event that happens right after Iron Viz, that stuck with me. The amount of time the contestants are being absolutely miserable. Maybe that's not quite the right word, but so in earlier days, the data set was not as complicated, and you didn't have as long to work with it. So I got the data on a Monday evening, and then had to do Iron Viz on a Thursday morning. Jeff, I think maybe you got it a couple of days earlier, but it kind of, it preoccupied my entire time at the conference. I'm looking for the best stories in the data. It's taking up the whole time. I'm thinking of these 3 contestants, and they got this data set 3 weeks ahead of time. And apparently it was one nasty, messy data set. You needed 3 weeks to go with this. And that just strikes me as asking these contestants to put a lot of time, effort, and suffering into this thing. So, Jeff, I'm going to ask you first about the data set, and then I'm going to make a suggestion about a way to kind of reward this incredible efforts on the part of Joshua Lindsay and Hesham.
Yeah, I mean, you're right on. In 2014, when I competed, the data set started to get big. We had Yelp data, and it was really messy. It was supposed to be Yelp data for Las Vegas, but there were things all over the world. So it had to really be filtered down. Tableau, this was before Hyper and other things that they did to improve the rendering engine. So, I mean, it took literally 20 or 30 seconds just to open the data set. And that's a lot of time when you have, only 20 minutes to build a viz, and you got to wait 20 or 30 seconds for a data set to load, and then you got to spend some time cleaning it. So, what I'd like to see is just maybe less time on that. I have lots of other ideas that are maybe outside of Iron Viz. Is maybe they do an iron prep. Maybe they do a session where people are prepping the data, or work with Carl, who's got prepping, a sort of a Makeover Monday style prepping data session, social media, social engagement. Maybe they can clean data or something. But I think giving them a smaller, cleaner data set, that's not real world. I get it. But, building the viz in 20 minutes, it's kind of like the calculations, back in our day. I couldn't copy. We weren't allowed to copy and paste formulas in. The only thing we were allowed to have was a sheet of paper to reference some notes, and you weren't going to write a formula that you had to type in on a long piece of paper. So all that had to be done on the fly.
Well, today, Jeff, I was using Tableau for the IBM 360, and I was, it took 18 minutes just to load all the punch cards. So
I understand. Yeah, I understand.
It was
but
pretty
and then one of the most, probably the the moment of Iron Viz that everybody was screaming was, right in the beginning when Lindsay, copied over this giant calculation, and then she's using this copy paste technique, right out of there. She's just highlighting it and dragging it over to create these calculated fields. And I'm sure that at least half or more of the Zen masters and ambassadors were looking up there going, had no idea you could do that, me included. And I certainly didn't know that you could put those, the slashes in there to create the calculation names, and everybody's getting excited. That's interesting, right? It's not about the details.
By the way, you're never going to use that any other time that you're going to have ever. You're just going to open other workbooks and copy and paste stuff from other workbooks.
Yeah.
You're never going to use that technique.
But every Iron Viz contestant from now on will.
I completely agree. In any case, here's the other thing, and then we're going to need to wrap up soon, and want to offer some questions here. And I don't know if Hesham is still here, or there may be some other Iron Viz contestants that are here. We can hear from him, or if Lindsay's here, from her. I think they should up the prize money. If I think everyone should get some money, and it should be a bigger prize. First prize $5,000, second prize $3,000, third prize $2,000. And Jeff, they should make it retroactive, going back to at least 2015. So if you're gonna kill yourself for 3 weeks to look, this thing is sponsored by Pitney Bowes. They're paying money to have their data set, and my God, the free consulting they're getting on their data set has got to be worth tens, if not $100,000 on this thing. Show them a little more love. So 3 things: audience vote should be in the app, not via Twitter. Provide data that doesn't hurt so much, and provide more prizes so everybody wins some monetary prizes. And I would say make the prizes larger. Jeff,
I can't disagree with that. I can't disagree at all. I'd like to disagree with you because we should disagree on something today. But I agree, and a lot of the other Viz competitions are structured in the same way: first, second, third prize. And sort of scaled money prizes as well.
So, hey, we're just going to do 2 more things with folks. We will leave things open for chat because we're happy to entertain questions, and we got some, a bunch of names that I recognize, some great people here. So, an opportunity not just to ask us questions, but some of your fellow attendees of Chart Chat. But Jeff was thinking he saw something that I posted yesterday or the day before and said, oh, maybe we'll have a discussion of Marimekko chart. So I just love this explanation from Mona Chalabi on how the marginal taxes work in the UK. And Jeff, you kind of pointed out maybe this isn't technically a Marimekko because this is showing going from left to right is over time. This is how much money.
Well, no, in this case, it's your income, right? I guess it's either your income over time as you get to $100,000, or it's just the bracket. Your x-axis is income, so it's a scaled variable. I'd still consider it a Marimekko, I guess. It's just that in traditional Marimekkos, they're usually categorical variables, and I think I like this better than when it is used as a categorical variable. I think the next slide has more traditional, where the order and the categories they don't have any meaning, right? France could be ahead of Spain, or Spain could be ahead of France, depending on how you did it. Each one's an independent category, but and I'm not saying this is a bad one either, but Italy in this case, the largest amount of debt. You have the debt among the nations. You're really using 2 measures. One is the width of the bar, and your other measure is the height of the bar. And it's usually done with a category of some sort. And so, in Mona Chalabi's example, I think that works really, really, really well. It reminds me of the Florence Nightingale redesign I did, which was over time, where the x-axis was date, and in this case, it's the level of income.
So, odd thing is, I really, I'll mention it in our workshops. I almost always can find an alternative a Marimekko chart. Yet I've written 2 blog posts on it, and now we're probably going to cover it again in chart chat. And it just keeps coming up again and again and again. Okay. Workshops and resources. So, bigbookofdashboards.com. You can find all the recordings of chart chat. You can find 14 of the 28 dashboards in downloadable format, as well as links to workshops. And I will be in Tucson, Memphis, Charlotte, and Boston in Q1. And I do please let people know about these. And
Hesham's still on.
yeah.
And I guess I'm going to put you on the spot, Steve. You know, you were, not only did you compete in the 2011 Iron Viz, you also were a judge in 2012, weren't you?
I was a judge in 2012. That's
okay.
correct.
So if you were on the stage and it was kicked back to you as a tie, and you had to make the deciding vote, what would you do, Steve? Who's your call?
Well, what I would do is what I've learned from the having 2 incredibly good collaborators on the Big Book of Dashboards. I would ask Andy and Jeff to decide who should win. Hey, Hesham, have you recovered from your either jet lag or the 3 weeks of pain? And almost, but not yet. Anthony Armstrong is suggesting, I guess you could either look at it as, I guess, logarithmic way of
the log prizes. That's what
I got to tell you, I'd feel pretty crappy coming in 3rd place and getting $100, and 1st place getting 10,000. So
maybe it's maybe 5, 2, and 1. What do you think about that?
Oh, I think, well, it's somebody else's money, Jeff. I think the total pot should be $25,000 and figure out a way to split it. So, hey, future Iron Viz winners out there, if they end up upping the prize money, you are buying us dinner.
You want lunch out of it.
You are buying us a nice dinner. And I want to order fries with my meal.
All right.
Well. All right. Hey, folks, have a wonderful Thanksgiving. For those of you live, those of you who are watching this 2-3 months later, I hope you had a great Thanksgiving. And we will be back beginning of the year sometime. And,
if you're still in the chat window and you want to suggest topics for 2020, we're starting to put together the events for 2020. As well as possibly some guests, and anything you'd like to see, let us know. Either shoot us an email, message us on Twitter, put it in the chat window. Thank you all for joining us.
Oh, where do we watch old chart chats? Go to bigbookofdashboards.com, and you can find them there. There's in fact, let's do this in real time, folks.
I got it.
Okay. I'm going to share your screen and just show where they are.
Yeah, I can do that. I sent the link as well.
Nope, we're good. So there you go, Lynn.
We're only missing one of the old chart chats, which I believe is episode 6, which is why we now add the record button in there.
By the way, in episode 3, Jeff gets so angry he makes me cry. Really, so check it out.
Is that when low on views? You're just trying to get people to watch number 3?
Yeah, exactly. Man, I didn't see him cry. When did that happen?
How to deal with data on a wide scale. For example, mortality rates, 10 versus incident. Oh, yes, that's a great question. Yeah, so you want to compare the stock price of Berkshire Hathaway to the stock price of any other stock. Yeah, things that are on completely very wide scales. That's a great topic.
Jeff, this is so I've my little side passion project is getting live venues to stop having music that is so loud. And trying to explain how decibel works to people is the same thing.
Yeah. because it's log. Yeah.
It's ridiculous. You know, you go out on an airport tarmac and somebody has a 747 come out and all four jets are blaring. It's 130 decibels. Somebody says, "Hey, come over here," and another jet plane gets there, and now you have 8 engines going. It's 133 dB. So people
Right.
think, you know, oh, the difference between 90 and 95, it's huge. And how do you explain that? How do you get people to understand it? So that's a similar type of thing, Regis.
Yeah, thank you. We'll add that. Well, that's a great topic. We'll put that down.
All right, Jeff.
How to visualize tolerance among KPIs. All right. Well, we're gonna end the recording here. We'll hang out for anybody who has other questions. We'll hang in the chat window. We're just gonna turn off the recording here. Thank you very much, everybody.